I spent 30 years sacrificing everything to build a retirement worth $3.8 million. I left work early that day, drove home with my heart racing with excitement, ready to celebrate this milestone with my husband and daughter. But as I stepped through the front door, I heard my daughter's voice drifting from the kitchen, urgent, secretive, speaking to someone on the phone. I froze in the hallway and listened. What I heard in those next 2 minutes shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. So I stayed silent, and I started planning. Thank you for being here, truly. The fact that you chose to spend a few minutes listening to my story means more than you know. Before we go on, leave a comment and let me know where you're watching, from what city, what country. It helps me remember that none of us are alone in this. One quick note before we continue: some elements of this story have been fictionalized for educational and entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real names or situations is coincidental, but the lesson I'm sharing is something I believe truly matters. I received a $3.8 million retirement package after 30 years of sacrificing everything for my family. The papers sat in my passenger seat, still crisp official stamps gleaming in the late afternoon sun. I'd stopped at Pike Place Market on the way home, champagne moët and yellow tulips, because Richard had once said yellow meant joy. 30 years. The thoughts circled through my mind as I navigated Friday traffic through downtown Seattle. 30 years of 12-hour days, client dinners I couldn't refuse, weekend site visits I couldn't postpone. I'd missed 4 of Emily's school events, 4 out of hundreds, but somehow those 4 had defined me in ways the 200 I'd attended never did. I thought about Richard, probably home already. He'd stopped working 15 years ago after his teaching contract wasn't renewed. "I need to find myself," he'd said. I'd supported that. Someone had to keep the mortgage paid, the retirement accounts, funded the college tuition checks from bouncing. Emily was 28 now, my brilliant daughter, the lawyer. She'd inherited my work ethic, or so I'd thought. The Bellevue house came into view, the one with maple trees. I'd insisted the developer plant the ones that turned gold every October. The house itself was mine in ways beyond the deed. I'd designed it 20 years ago. Clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, facing Lake Washington, a skylight over the entryway, because I'd believed light could fill spaces the way love filled lives. I pulled into the driveway at 3:30, 2 hours earlier than usual. Surprise. We'd celebrate together, the 3 of us. The front door opened with its familiar brass hinges. I'd chosen myself, solid, meant to last generations. The skylight poured September sun across the slate floor, illuminating the entryway in honey-colored light. Home. After 30 years of coming through this door exhausted, I was finally coming through it triumphant. Then I heard her voice from upstairs, my daughter, coming from my home office. She was on the phone. I froze at the bottom of the oak staircase, my hand still on the doorknob. The champagne bottle sweated condensation onto my blazer. The tulips trembled in my grip. "Dad, once we file, that money is half yours. Mom won't see it coming." The words didn't make sense at first. They arrived in my brain like a foreign language requiring translation. A pause. Then, "No, I already copied all her financial records. Trevor has everything he needs." Another pause. My heart had stopped. I was certain. Architects understand structure, and I understood in that moment that the structure of my life was failing. Then Emily laughed. Not a real laugh, not the one from childhood, bright and surprised. This laugh was cold, calculated. "Dad, she chose work over us. She chose awards and recognition over being a real mother. She doesn't deserve that money. We do. We suffered while she built her precious buildings. She didn't." I stood at the bottom of our oak staircase, the same staircase where I'd photographed Emily on her first day of kindergarten, gap-toothed smile and Sailor Moon backpack. The same staircase where I'd taken pictures before her law school graduation, her in that black gown, me bursting with pride. My daughter wasn't just betraying me. She was rewriting history, erasing every sacrifice, every missed dinner I'd apologized for, every video call from construction sites where I'd asked about her homework and her friends and her dreams. She was making me the villain in a story I didn't even know I was living. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't confront her. Some distant functioning part of my brain, the part that had gotten me through 30 years of impossible deadlines, took control. I set the champagne bottle down on the console table, careful not to let it clink. I laid the tulips beside it, their yellow heads bright against dark wood. Then I turned and walked back to my car, my footsteps silent on the slate I'd chosen because it was beautiful and would last forever. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I sat there in my own driveway in front of the house I'd designed and tried to remember how to breathe. I don't go home that night. Instead, I drive north on Interstate 5 muscle memory, guiding me toward Capitol Hill, toward the cafe where I used to sketch designs before meetings. The city blurs past the Space Needle lit against the darkening sky, the lake reflecting twilight. The cafe is still there. Same chip tables, same local art on brick walls, same espresso machine hissing. I order something I don't remember what and sit in the back corner where I used to spread blueprints across scratched wood. For 2 hours, I sit there. My coffee goes cold. My phone stays face down on the table. But Emily's words keep playing on loop. She doesn't deserve that money. We do. You, my daughter, and my husband. A unit, a conspiracy. And I'm the enemy. I try to remember signs I missed. Richard's distance over the past year, but I'd attributed that to his unemployment, his searching for purpose. Emily's infrequent calls, but she was busy. Young lawyers are always busy. Somewhere around hour 2, something shifts. The shock crystallizes into something colder, more focused. My architect's brain kicks in the part that doesn't panic when projects go wrong, that problem solves instead of catastrophizing. Structure, foundation, load-bearing walls. Every problem has a solution if you approach it systematically. I pull out my phone. No messages, no missed calls. They don't know I know. That's when it hits me Emily doesn't know the exact amount yet. I'd gotten the paperwork today, but the official company-wide announcement won't go out until next week. Standard procedure, HR processes, board approval, public relations timing. Richard and Emily are planning something, but they're planning with incomplete information. That's a strategic advantage. I check my watch, 8 p.m. Late but not too late. I scroll through contacts, find the name I need. Diana Foster answers on the 3rd ring. Catherine, what's wrong? Diana has been my closest friend for 25 years since we met at a University of Washington fundraiser, where I was donating design services and she was teaching constitutional law. She can read my silences better than most people read my words. I need to ask you something, I say. My voice sounds distant, clinical. If someone was planning to... If I needed a divorce lawyer, who would you recommend? Silence. Then, Catherine, what happened? I tell her. Not everything I can't, not yet, but enough. The overheard phone call. The conspiracy. The way my daughter's voice sounded when she said I didn't deserve my own money. Emily. Diana's voice cracks. You're Emily, Catherine, listen to me. You need a lawyer, not tomorrow, now. We talk for 20 minutes. She gives me a name, Victoria Kane, a divorce specialist in Tacoma who handles high-asset cases. She tells me not to go home tonight, not to confront anyone yet. Gather evidence first, protect myself first, grieve later. Where will you stay? She asks. The Edgewater. The hotel where Richard and I spent our wedding night 30 years ago. I don't mention that to Diana. Some ironies are too heavy to speak aloud. The hotel room smells like lavender and sea breeze from Elliott Bay. I drop my purse on the bed, my blazer on the chair. That's when I notice something in my car's back seat, visible through the window, a manila folder. I retrieve it. Inside is Emily's drawing from 2nd grade, the one I'd found last week while cleaning my office. I'd planned to frame it, bring it home, put it on my desk as a reminder of why I'd worked so hard. Crayon on construction paper. A lopsided house with too many windows and a garden of flowers like lollipops. At the bottom, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, my mom the builder. It's 3 a.m. when I finally sit on the hotel bed holding that drawing. I still can't cry, but I can think. I can't save my marriage. The trust is shattered beyond repair. I can't save my relationship with Emily. You can't force someone to love you, to see you as human instead of as an ATM machine with a heartbeat. But I can save myself. The shock is fading now, replaced by something harder. Something strategic. The architect in me is already drafting blueprints not for buildings this time, but for survival. Maybe after 30 years of building other people's dreams, I've earned the right to protect my own. Diana met me for breakfast at 7 a.m. sharp at a diner on Pike Street that smelled like burnt coffee and old bacon grease. She slid into the booth across from me and studied my face the way she'd studied case law for 25 years, methodically looking for flaws in the argument. "Are you sure?" she asked before I'd even finished my first sentence. "Could you have misheard? Could you be reading too much into it?" I met her eyes. A mother knows her daughter's voice. A mother knows cruelty when she hears it. Diana's jaw tightened. She pulled out her phone. "Then you need a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best." She dialed a number from memory. Victoria Kane, Tacoma. "She's expensive, Catherine, but you need someone who's handled high-asset divorces with complications." I heard Diana say the word $3.8 million into the phone, and I watched her face shift from concern to something harder. When she hung up, she squeezed my hand. "Victoria can see you this afternoon, 2 o'clock. Don't be late." I drove back to my office after breakfast, but I didn't go inside. Instead, I sat in my car in the underground garage and pulled up the remote access to our home network, something I'd set up years ago when Richard complained about forgetting passwords. I logged into the system administrator panel and opened the activity log. My hands shook as I scrolled. Emily had accessed my personal files 3 weeks ago. Not once, 7 times. She'd opened my tax returns, my investment statements, my retirement account summary documents I kept in a password-protected folder she shouldn't have known existed. She'd copied everything. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision triggered by my retirement package. This had been planned, calculated. My daughter had been preparing to betray me long before I ever walked through that door and heard her voice upstairs. I closed the laptop and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. For 30 years, I'd built structures that could withstand earthquakes, but I hadn't built a family that could withstand this. The drive to Tacoma took 50 minutes in mid-afternoon traffic. I followed the I-5 south past the industrial port, past the refineries until the skyline opened up, and I could see Commencement Bay stretching gray and endless under the late September sky. Victoria Kane's office sat in a renovated brick building near the waterfront with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the bay like a painting. The receptionist led me down a hallway lined with framed settlements, cases won lives rebuilt. I wondered if mine would end up on that wall someday. Victoria was younger than I expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and a navy suit that looked like it cost more than my first car. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the retirement package, about driving home with champagne and tulips, about standing at the base of my oak staircase and hearing my daughter plot my financial destruction with the man I'd supported for 15 years. I told her about the computer logs, about Emily copying my files 3 weeks before I ever received the package. Victoria took notes in quick, decisive strokes. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back. "Your daughter isn't just betraying you," she said. "If she's acting as your husband's legal advisor in a divorce action that directly involves you, she's committing a severe conflict of interest. Depending on how deep her involvement goes, this could destroy her career." My chest tightened. "She's still my daughter. And she's still trying to steal from you." Victoria's voice didn't soften. "The question is, are you going to let her—" I stared out the window at Commencement Bay. A ferry was crossing the water, slow and steady, carrying people toward destinations I couldn't see. "No," I said finally, "I'm not." Victoria nodded. She opened a drawer and pulled out a legal pad. "Good, then let's get to work. For 30 years, I've built structures designed to last for generations. Now I was being asked to build something designed to destroy." Victoria slid a legal pad across her desk. On it, she'd sketched a timeline 30 days from the retirement announcement to the actual wire transfer. "Washington is a community property state," she said. "Default is 50-50. Everything acquired during the marriage gets split down the middle." I felt my stomach drop. "So Richard gets half?" "Normally, yes." Victoria tapped her pen against the pad. "But there are exceptions. Adultery, fraud, timing. If we can prove Richard and Emily conspired to defraud you, and if we can protect the funds before they officially become marital property, we can shift the balance." She leaned forward. Your retirement package hasn't transferred yet. Morrison and Partners has a 30-day processing window. That gives us time. Time for what? Time to build a strategy. Victoria's voice was steady, clinical. We hire a private investigator to document everything Richard's affair, Emily's involvement, the computer access logs. We establish an irrevocable trust to protect the funds, and we file first before they know what's coming. I stared at the timeline. 30 days. 30 days to dismantle a marriage, a family, a life I'd spent 3 decades building. If I do this, I said slowly, I lose her forever. Victoria's expression didn't soften. Catherine, I think you've already lost her. You just haven't accepted it yet. I pulled the drawing from my bag, the one I'd found in my car the night before. Emily's childhood sketch, the house made of crayon, the wobbly letters, my builder mother. The memory came back so sharp it hurt. She was 8 years old. It was a Saturday morning in late spring, and I'd brought her to my office because Richard had a golf game and couldn't watch her. I'd expected her to be bored to complain, to ask when we could leave. Instead, she'd climbed onto the stool beside my drafting table and watched me work. What are you drawing, Mama? A house, I said. For a family in Issaquah. They want big windows so they can see the mountains. Emily had reached for a piece of scrap paper and a box of crayons. Her tongue stuck out in concentration the way mine did when I was deep in a design. For 20 minutes, she drew in silence a square house with a triangle roof, 4 windows, a red door, a sun in the corner. When she finished, she held it up. Look, Mama, I made a house too. I'd taken it from her small hands, studied the careful lines, the way she tried to make the windows even. It's beautiful, sweetheart. She'd beamed. When I grow up, I want to build houses like you, Mama. I'd kissed her forehead. You can build anything you want, sweetheart. Anything at all. Now she was building my destruction. I set the drawing on Victoria's desk. My hands were shaking again. What if she didn't mean it? What if she's being manipulated by Richard? Does it matter? Victoria's tone wasn't cruel, just honest. She accessed your files. She copied your documents. She's helping him plan a legal strategy against you. Whether she's doing it willingly or under duress, the result is the same. I closed my eyes. 30 years. 30 years of missed recitals because I had a site inspection. 30 years of working late while Richard took Emily to the park. 30 years of sacrificing time for money, presents for security. Maybe this was what I'd earned. No. The word came out stronger than I expected. I opened my eyes. I didn't sacrifice 30 years to hand it over to a man who gave up and a daughter who thinks I deserve to be punished for working. Victoria smiled, small, professional, approving. Good, then let's get started. I signed the retainer agreement. My hand didn't shake this time. Victoria pushed a business card across the table. Owen Sullivan, retired Seattle PD. He specializes in surveillance for high-asset divorce cases. Expensive, but you'll need the best. I took the card. The raised lettering felt solid under my thumb. Whoever I was when I walked into this office, I wasn't that person anymore. I was someone who was done being a victim. The next morning, day 3. I found myself in Owen Sullivan's office, a cramped space cluttered with case files and old coffee cups. He had the kind of face that had seen everything twice and no longer knew how to be surprised. Tell me everything he said. So I did. My husband, my daughter, the conspiracy I'd overheard, the $3.8 million they were trying to take. Owen asked practical questions without a trace of judgment. When might they file? Do you suspect another woman? See, that second question stopped me cold. I thought back. Richard's yoga phase had started 2 years ago. That was when he'd first put a password on his phone. New clothes appeared in his closet, fitted shirts, expensive jeans. He'd started caring about his health after 15 years of indifference. Yes, I said quietly. I think there is. Owen made a note. I'll start surveillance today. Your husband first, then your daughter. Most important, don't change your behavior at home. Act normal. Be the wife and mother you've always been. That instruction made me want to vomit. That evening, I went home for the first time since the discovery. Richard was cooking dinner. That alone was unusual. He almost never cooked. There you are, I was starting to worry. Where have you been? I lied smoothly. Shopping, driving around, just needed time to process the retirement. He smiled, relieved. Of course. Big transition. I made pot roast for dinner, Richard's favorite. I set the table the way I always did, with cloth napkins and the blue plates we'd gotten as a wedding gift. Emily arrived just after 6 carrying a bottle of wine. She kissed my cheek. "Hi, Mama." I watched her all through dinner. She didn't meet my eyes, not once. Richard was overly affectionate, touching my hand, praising the food, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Guilt, I thought. They were both drowning in guilt. When they asked about the retirement package, I kept my answers vague. "Still finalizing the paperwork," I said. "Tax issues, annuity structure. I'll know more next week." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly, but she accepted the answer. After dinner, Richard cleared the dishes, another rarity. Emily stayed at the table with me, sipping her wine. "How are you feeling about everything, Mama?" she asked. Her voice was careful, measured. "Relieved," I said. 30 years is a long time." "You deserve this," Emily said. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You worked so hard. You sacrificed so much." I looked at her. Really looked at her. My daughter. The child I'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, helped through college applications and heartbreaks. The woman who was planning to destroy me. "Yes," I said softly. "I did sacrifice a lot." Emily's smile faltered for just a second. Then it returned, bright and practiced. When she left that night, she hugged me at the door. "I love you, Mama. You worked so hard. You deserve this retirement." I held her close, forcing my voice to stay steady. "We all get what we work for, sweetheart." She pulled back, and for a second, something flickered in her eyes. Then it was gone. Richard came up behind me after Emily's car disappeared down the street. He wrapped his arms around my waist and rested his chin on my shoulder, a gesture that used to feel comforting. Now it felt like a cage. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You built something incredible." I leaned back into him, playing the role Owen had told me to play. "We built it together." I lied. He kissed the side of my head. "I love you." "I love you too." The words tasted like ash. Owen had promised me results within a week. Photographs, timelines, evidence I could use. I didn't expect him to call in just 4 days. Day 7. 4 days after I'd hired Owen, I stared at the photographs he'd arranged across his desk, evidence laid out like a murder trial. The victim was my life. Owen had called early that morning. "I've got what you need. Can you come in?" Now I sat across from him, looking down at yellow manila folders. He opened the first one. Jessica Warren, 44, yoga instructor. Owen slid a photo toward me. A blonde woman younger than me, attractive and fit, wearing yoga pants and a fitted tank top. Richard stood beside her, his hand on the small of her back. The affair's been going on for 18 months. 18 months, a year and a half of lies. The second photo showed Richard holding keys, stepping into an apartment building in Fremont. He's been keeping a place, living a double life. My first thought was absurdly practical. Where did he get the money he hadn't worked in 15 years? Owen anticipated the question. He pushed bank statements across the desk. $127,000, transferred from your joint account over the past 18 months. I scanned the entries. Small amounts, $2,000 here, $3,000 there. Nothing large enough to trigger my attention. I'd been too busy working to notice. Who authorized these? I asked, though I already knew. Owen slid another document forward. Your daughter. She signed off on them as family financial advisor. Emily had stolen from me to fund our father's affair. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I didn't cry. I just sat there staring at the numbers. Then Owen showed me the rest. Photos of Emily meeting Jessica Warren for coffee. Not once. 6 times over the past 6 months. Photos of Emily and Jessica shopping together, laughing like friends. Text messages legally obtained through Jessica's phone records, subpoenaed for another case Owen was working. One stood out. Jessica to Emily. Your mom had her career. Now it's your dad's turn. And yours. You both deserve this. My daughter had known. Not just about the affair. She'd been part of the plan. She'd been planning with them. I thought back to that dinner 3 nights ago. Emily kissing my cheek, telling me I deserved this retirement. The way she couldn't meet my eyes. She'd known all along. Owen pulled out the last photograph. 3 people at a restaurant laughing over wine and appetizers. Richard, Emily, and a man I didn't recognize, maybe 40 expensive suit confident posture. Who's that? I asked. Trevor Banks, Owen said, your daughter's former colleague at her old firm. He's their divorce lawyer. I stared at the photo. So Emily's not just helping Richard plan, she's brought in legal representation. More than that. Owen tapped the photo. Banks is handling their case. Emily's acting as his paralegal. That's a severe conflict of interest. If the Washington State Bar finds out, it could destroy both their careers. I looked at the three of them, my husband, my daughter, and a lawyer I'd never met, conspiring over wine to take everything I'd built. And something inside me finally broke. Not into sadness, into something cold, sharp, and calculating. I thought of the 8-year-old girl who'd sat beside my drafting table, drawing houses with crayons. The girl who'd said, I want to build houses like you, Mama. Now she was building my destruction. I set the photos down carefully, lining them up in a neat row. Get me everything, I said quietly. Every meeting, every transaction, every conversation, every text, every email, every receipt. I want documentation of every single move they've made. Owen nodded slowly. You planning to go to war? I met his eyes. I'm planning to win. After seeing Owen's evidence on day 7, I went home that afternoon knowing I had 1 week before the questions would intensify. The company announcement was scheduled for day 14. I had 7 days to perfect my performance. Days 8 and 9. I played the perfect wife, the perfect mother. I asked Richard about his day over breakfast. I texted Emily to suggest lunch. I smiled. I laughed at jokes that weren't funny. I touched Richard's hand across the table the way I used to when I still believed in us. Maybe we should start planning that Europe trip, I said one evening. Emily, you should come too. Finally, our family could spend real time together. Emily's response was carefully neutral. That sounds great, Mama. Owen sent daily updates, more meetings between Richard and Jessica. Trevor Banks having lunch with Emily, their heads bent together over documents I couldn't see. But I didn't react. I just kept playing my role. Day 10. I decided to tell them before they found out from other sources. I called a family meeting at home. I poured wine, a good Pinot Noir Richard liked. Okay, I said, settling into the armchair. I got the full breakdown from the company. The total is substantial, around $3.8 million. Emily's eyes lit up. But I continued, keeping my voice measured. It's complicated. After taxes, after setting up the mandatory annuity structure, after all the fees, the immediate cash I can access is only about $800,000. The rest is locked into payments over 20 years. Emily's face fell. She tried to hide it, but I saw. Richard leaned forward. Well, $800,000 up front is still wonderful, sweetheart. But his voice had lost its excitement. I watched them both process the information, watched them recalculate, watch greed transform into disappointment, then resignation. It's still a blessing, I said softly. We'll be comfortable. Emily nodded, her smile tight. Of course, Mama, you deserve every bit of it. Do I thought, or do you still plan to take it anyway? Days 11 through 13. They accepted the story. Emily stopped asking probing questions. Richard stopped hovering quite so much. Owen's surveillance continued. Jessica Warren appeared at Richard's yoga classes 3 times that week. Trevor Banks met Emily for coffee twice more, but the energy had shifted. The urgency had faded. $800,000 wasn't enough to risk a public battle. Not when they'd have to wait 20 years for the rest. I'd bought myself time. Day 14. The official company announcement went out system-wide. A press release vague and corporate, Catherine Hayes retires after 30 years receiving comprehensive retirement package. No specific dollar amount. Company privacy policy. Emily called me that afternoon. I saw the announcement on social media. Congratulations again, Mama. Her voice sounded flat. Thank you, sweetheart. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen for a long time staring at my phone. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror staring at a stranger. Somewhere in the past 2 weeks, I'd become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could lie straight to her daughter's face. Someone who could kiss her husband goodnight, knowing he was planning to destroy her. Someone who could smile over wine while plotting a counterattack. The woman in the mirror looked tired. Older, but also stronger. Colder. I thought about the architect I used to be, the one who built structures meant to shelter families to keep people safe. I'd spent 30 years designing homes for other people while my own collapsed from the inside. I'd spent 30 years being warm. Nurturing, giving. Maybe it was time to be something else. I turned off the bathroom light and went to bed beside my husband. He reached for my hand in the dark the way he used to when we were young and still in love. I let him hold it, but I didn't squeeze back. The next 2 weeks passed in carefully orchestrated performance. Then, with just 2 days left before the money transferred, Victoria called me in for final preparations on day 27. Day 27, 10 a.m. I sat in Victoria's office while she laid out the final strategy. "Everything's ready," she said, sliding documents across her desk. "The irrevocable trust was signed last week. The money will transfer directly into it the moment it hits your account. No way for Richard to claim it's marital property." She tapped 2 manila folders. Complaints to the Washington State Bar, one for Emily, one for Trevor Banks. Both for conflict of interest, both supported by Owen's surveillance. A 3rd folder, divorce petition. Full evidence attached, bank records, photographs, text messages. We file everything simultaneously the moment the transfer completes. "They won't have time to react," Victoria said. "By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be over." Owen arrived with his final surveillance report. "More footage from the past week," he said. 3 more meetings between your daughter and Trevor Banks. Everything's documented, time-stamped, ready for court." He didn't offer to show me the photos again. We both knew what they contained. I asked a question I'd been avoiding. "Owen, in your professional experience, is there any possibility I'm wrong about her, that she's just confused?" Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Catherine, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen every kind of betrayal. Your daughter isn't confused. She knows exactly what she's doing." Something inside me finally accepted it. Emily wasn't a victim of Richard's manipulation. She was his partner. Day 28, evening. I made dinner a final family meal that I knew would be our last. Not pot roast this time. I made grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, Emily's childhood favorite. We ate. We talked about nothing important. Richard mentioned a show he wanted us all to watch together. Emily told a story about a colleague at work, probably Trevor Banks, though she didn't use his name. I poured wine. We raised our glasses. "To new beginnings," Richard said. "To new beginnings," Emily echoed. I smiled and clinked my glass against theirs. Under the table, my hands clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms, leaving deep crescent marks in my skin. After dinner, Richard helped clean up another rarity. He was performing too, trying to be the husband he thought I wanted. When we finished, he kissed me goodnight. "We're going to have an amazing retirement together, Kat. Travel, relax, finally get to enjoy life." I smiled at him. "Yes," I said softly, "we'll both get exactly what we deserve." He didn't catch the irony. He never did. That night, I lay in bed beside my husband, the man I'd supported for 15 years, who'd stolen from me to fund his mistress, who'd recruited our daughter to help destroy me, and I counted down the hours. 48 hours, 2 more days. I thought about the 8-year-old girl who'd drawn houses with crayons, the teenager who'd helped me pick out tile samples for a client's kitchen, the young woman who'd hugged me at her law school graduation and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mama. I couldn't have done this without you." Where had that girl gone? Or had she ever really existed? Maybe I'd been building a fiction all along, a daughter who loved me, a husband who valued me, a family that was real. Maybe I'd been the architect of my own delusion, but not anymore. In 48 hours, everything would change. The money would transfer at 9:47 a.m. on day 30. Victoria would move it into the trust by 10 a.m. By noon, the divorce petition and bar complaints would be filed. By the time Richard and Emily realized what had happened, it would be too late. I just had to hold on for 2 more days. 2 more days of smiling, 2 more days of lying, 2 more days of pretending I didn't know. I could do that. I'd been doing it for weeks. What was 2 more days? Those 48 hours felt like 48 years. I barely slept, barely ate. I moved through day 29 like a ghost in my own house, making small talk with Richard, responding to Emily's texts, pretending everything was normal while my heart hammered against my ribs. Then, Tuesday morning, day 30, arrived with a cruelty of normalness. The sun rose over Lake Washington. Birds sang. The world continued as if my world wasn't about to explode. I sat in my car outside a cafe on Capitol Hill, unable to be at home, unable to do anything but wait. At 9:47 a.m., my phone vibrated. Bank notification. Wire transfer received $3,800,000. I stared at the screen. 30 years of work, 30 years of sacrifice, 30 years reduced to a number on a screen. My hands shook as I dialed Victoria. "It's here," I said. "I'm at the bank," she replied. "Come now." I met Victoria in a private conference room at Seattle Federal Credit Union. A financial officer sat across from us processing paperwork with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen 1,000 fortunes change hands. "We're transferring the full amount into the Catherine Hayes Irrevocable Retirement Trust," Victoria explained to him. "Washington state law protects retirement assets held in this structure. Once established, these funds cannot be claimed in divorce proceedings." The officer nodded. "I'll need your signature here, Mrs. Hayes. And here." I signed. My hand didn't shake this time. "It's done," the officer said. "The funds are now protected under the trust." Victoria closed her folder. Phase 1 complete. Now we file. 11:15 a.m. We stood in the King County Courthouse surrounded by the quiet hum of a system built on broken families and broken promises. Victoria handed a thick manila envelope to the clerk. "Petition for divorce. Hayes versus Hayes." The clerk stamped it, filed it, made it real. I watched the stamp come down filed and something inside me finally released. "Grounds?" the clerk asked, scanning the forms. "Adultery, financial fraud, conspiracy to defraud." Victoria's voice was steady, professional. "Full evidence is attached: surveillance photographs, bank statements documenting the theft of $127,000, text messages, everything." The clerk's eyebrows rose slightly, but she said nothing. She'd seen worse. "Process server?" she asked. "Already arranged," Victoria said. "Papers will be served this afternoon. 12 p.m. Victoria's assistant filed the complaints with the Washington State Bar Association. 2 separate filings. Complaint 1. Emily Hayes. Conflict of interest, theft of confidential client information, professional ethics violations. Complaint 2. Trevor Banks. Conspiracy. Ethics violations, knowing participation in fraud. If the bar found merit and with Owen's evidence, their careers were over. Emily had spent her whole life working toward becoming a lawyer. She'd sacrificed for it, studied for it, built her identity around it. Now I was going to take it away, the way she'd tried to take everything from me. 12:30 p.m. Victoria and I sat in her car outside the courthouse. My phone screen glowed with 3 missed calls, all from Richard. He didn't know yet. He was probably wondering where I was, wondering why I wasn't answering. Soon it would be 30 missed calls, then 300. Victoria turned to me. "Are you ready for phase 2? I looked at the phone, thought about the man I'd supported for 15 years, the man who'd stolen from me to fund his mistress, the man who'd recruited our daughter to destroy me. I thought about Emily, the child I'd worked 80-hour weeks for, the daughter I'd sacrificed everything to give a better life. They'd tried to take it all. Now I was taking it back. "I've been ready for 30 years, I said quietly. "I just didn't realize it until 2 weeks ago." Victoria nodded and started the engine. "Then let's go serve some papers." By 2:00 p.m., my daughter's entire future had collapsed. She just didn't know it yet. 2:00 p.m. Owen's colleague, the process server, arrived at our Bellevue house. Richard was home. Owen had confirmed his schedule. Owen filmed from his car across the street, legal surveillance, documentation for court. Richard opened the envelope. Owen described it to me later. His face went white. He stood frozen for 30 seconds. Then he called someone, I'm guessing your daughter. 2:15 p.m. Emily was at her law office downtown when the registered mail arrived. Official complaint from the Washington State Bar Association. Owen had arranged a colleague there, too. I wanted documentation of everything. The report came through. She opened the envelope, read the first page, then ran straight to the bathroom. She was in there for 20 minutes. 2:30 p.m. My phone rang. "Emily?" I didn't answer. She called again. 17 missed calls in 15 minutes. I was at Diana's house now. I'd stay here. I wouldn't go home. Diana watched my phone light up continuously. "Catherine, maybe you should—" "No," I said. "Not yet. 3:00 p.m., Richard called. I answered. Put it on speaker. Victoria was there. What the hell have you done? He shouted. My voice was calm. I protected myself from thieves. You should call your lawyer. Oh, wait, he's about to be disbarred too. You can't do this. That money is marital property. We've been married 30 years. And you've been stealing from me for 18 months, I said quietly. You and our daughter. So yes, Richard, I can. And I did. I hung up. Victoria nodded approval. 3:30 p.m. Victoria's phone rang. Trevor Banks trying to negotiate. She answered on speaker. Her voice was ice. Tell your client we're happy to discuss settlement, she said. After the criminal investigation into the theft of $127,000 is complete. Criminal investigation. Trevor's voice cracked. You can't be serious. Try me, Victoria said. You knowingly participated in financial fraud. Your license is the least of your problems. She hung up. I stared at her. Will you really file criminal charges? Victoria shrugged. Depends on how reasonable they are in settlement negotiations. 5:00 p.m. The doorbell at Diana's house rang. We looked out the window. Emily's car was in the driveway. My daughter stood at the door. Mom, she screamed. Please talk to me. I'm your daughter. She was crying, hysterical, pounding on the door. I watched from the upstairs window. Diana stood beside me. Catherine, are you sure? I looked down at my daughter crying on the front porch. The daughter I'd carried for 9 months. The child I'd taught to draw. The girl who'd sat beside my drafting table and said, I want to build houses like you, Mama. The woman who'd planned to destroy me. She stopped being my daughter, I said softly, when she became my enemy. Diana said nothing. She just squeezed my hand. Emily stayed for 20 minutes, crying, begging, screaming my name. Eventually, she left. I watched her car disappear down the street, and I felt nothing. I went to the guest room Diana had prepared for me. I sat on the bed. I held nothing. I felt nothing. Victory, as I was learning, didn't feel like I'd expected. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like the loneliest place in the world. I thought about the woman I'd been 30 years ago, the young architect who'd believed she could have it all, career, family, love, the woman who'd sacrificed time with her daughter to build a future for her daughter. I'd succeeded. I'd built that future. And then my daughter had tried to take it from me. So I'd taken hers instead. The retirement money was protected. The divorce was filed. Emily's career would end. Trevor's career would end. Richard would get nothing. I'd won. But what I'd won was an empty house, a broken family, and a daughter who hated me. Maybe she always had. Maybe I'd just been too busy working to notice. I lay down on Diana's guest bed and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the sun was setting over Seattle. Inside, I was learning what it meant to be alone. If you're still here, drop any number from 1 to 10 in the comments, so I know you're still watching with me. And tell me this, if you were in my place standing upstairs while your daughter cried and begged outside the door, would you have opened it, or would you have stayed silent like I did? I want to know what you would have chosen in that exact moment. And one important note before we continue, the next part of this story includes some dramatized elements and may not be entirely real. If this kind of storytelling isn't for you, you're free to stop the video here. Revenge, they say, is supposed to feel satisfying, empowering, like justice finally served on a silver platter. They lied. Emily's voicemails came in waves, each one a different stage of grief I wasn't ready to witness. Day 31. Mom, please, I'm so sorry. Please just talk to me. Day 32. You have to understand. I was confused. Dad said, he said you didn't care about us anymore. Day 33, anger. You're really going to destroy my career over this, after everything I've done for this family. Day 35, desperation after she lost her job. I have nothing now, Mom, nothing. Are you happy? Day 37, broken. I don't know who I am anymore without my license, without my work, without you. I listened to every single one. I saved them all, but I never called back. Diana asked me once gently over coffee on my balcony overlooking the Sound, do you want to talk to her? I didn't have an answer. Trevor Banks resigned from his firm before they could fire him. Emily lost her last ally. Jessica Warren dumped Richard via text message. No explanation, just, I can't do this anymore. Don't contact me. Apparently, love dies fast when the money disappears. Richard showed up at Diana's house at 11 p.m. on day 42, drunk, shouting from the driveway that I'd stolen his life, that I'd poisoned his daughter against him, that I was a vindictive monster who destroyed families. Diana called the police. I filed for a restraining order the next morning. Victoria handled the paperwork with her usual efficiency. "He's falling apart," she said, not unkindly. They all do eventually. I wondered if I was falling apart, too. I just couldn't tell anymore. Week 3, days 45 through 51. Richard's lawyer contacted Victoria with a settlement proposal. The terms were desperate. He'd take whatever I offered, sign whatever I wanted, just please make it stop. "He's broken," Victoria said, reading the email aloud in her office. "Completely broken." Owen's surveillance reports confirmed it. Richard had moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Renton. Emily wasn't returning his calls. Jessica was already dating someone new, some tech executive she'd met at her yoga studio. Richard was alone now. Like me, the Washington State Bar held Emily's preliminary hearing on day 54. I didn't attend, I couldn't. But Victoria's colleague did, and she sent me the details. That evening, Emily had appeared before the disciplinary board pale and thin, wearing a gray suit that looked 2 sizes too big. She'd answered every question in a flat, defeated voice. She didn't try to defend herself, she just accepted responsibility and asked for mercy. The board's decision license suspended for a minimum of 24 months, pending completion of legal ethics coursework and a probationary period. Possible reinstatement after review. 2 years. My daughter couldn't practice law for 2 years. I read the email 3 times, then set my phone down and stared out at the Seattle skyline from my hotel room. I'd won. Completely and totally won. So why did it feel like I'd lost everything? Days 55 through 58. I spent packing up the Bellevue house. Richard had moved out on day 3, taking only his clothes and his car. Everything else, 30 years of accumulated life, fell to me to sort through. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, boxing up memories I didn't want to keep, but couldn't bring myself to throw away. Emily's childhood bedroom was the hardest. Her walls still had posters of famous female architects, Zaha Hadid, Maya, Lin, John Gang, women who'd shattered glass ceilings in a male-dominated field, women I'd told her to admire. I found a box in her closet filled with elementary school art projects, crayon drawings of houses, construction paper buildings, a clay model of the Space Needle she'd made in 4th grade, and buried at the bottom a stack of handmade birthday cards she'd given me over the years. I opened one at random, age 10. The front had a drawing of the 2 of us standing in front of a house, inside in careful block letters. "Dear Mom, you are my hero. When I grow up, I want to build houses just like you. Love, Emily." I sat on the floor of my daughter's empty bedroom holding the old birthday card in my hands. I stared at the innocent handwriting and wondered, when did this child disappear? Maybe I lost her years ago between the late nights at the office and the business trips to the East Coast. I built my career to give her a future, but in the process, I unknowingly let her build walls that separated us. I looked at Emily's old sketches scattered around me and felt a terrifying emptiness. I didn't recognize my daughter anymore. She had become a stranger, a calculating person I couldn't understand, and that was the greatest pain no amount of money could ever compensate for. I cried for the first time since this began, not in regret, in grief. I was mourning someone who was still alive, the little girl who once drew pictures of my builder mother and dreamed of being just like me. Where did she go, and when did I stop noticing? I'd spent 30 years building my daughter. She'd taken 8 weeks to force me to tear it down. Now sitting across from her in Victoria's conference room, I wasn't sure which of us had fallen further. I'd agreed to meet Emily once, only once. Victoria's office, Victoria present, recording device on. Emily walked in and I almost didn't recognize her. She'd lost at least 15 pounds. Dark circles hollowed out her eyes, unwashed hair pulled back, gray sweatpants. The moment she saw me, she started crying. "Mom, please. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake." A mistake is when you forget to pay a bill, Emily. What you did was calculated destruction. "I know you're right. Dad said you never loved us, that you chose your career. I believed him." You're 28 years old, Emily. You're a lawyer. And you chose to believe that I, the woman who worked 80-hour weeks to pay for your private school, your ballet lessons, your college, your law school, the apartment I'm still paying rent for, didn't love you. When you put it like that, it sounds so stupid. It sounds convenient. You convinced yourself I was the villain so you wouldn't feel guilty about stealing from me. Her tears stopped. Her face shifted into something harder. You were absent. Every school play, every performance, you were always in client meetings. The accusation hit the softest part of me, but I'd prepared for this. I missed exactly 4 school events in 18 years, Emily. I still have my work calendars. I photographed every first day of school. I video called you every night I traveled. I was present at 200 other events, but you only remember the 4 times I wasn't there. That's selective memory. That's how you rationalize betraying me. Maybe I'd rather have had a present mother than a rich one. Then why did you try to steal my retirement money if presents mattered more than money? You would have let me keep it. Answer me, Emily. Silence. She had no answer. You know what hurts me the most? It's not the money. It's not even the betrayal. It's that I have to wonder if you ever actually loved me or if you just loved what I could provide. And I'll never know the answer. Emily's face broke. I did love you. I do love you. I don't know what happened to me. I do. You got greedy, and you thought you were smart enough to get away with it. But you were wrong. I stood to leave. Emily grabbed my arm. Mom, please, tell me what I can do. Tell me how to fix this. I looked down at her hand, the same hand that used to hold mine when we crossed the street. I gently removed it. You can't fix this, Emily. Some things once broken can't be rebuilt. I know, I'm an architect. I walked toward the door. Mom, I didn't turn around. I spent 30 years teaching you that hard work and integrity matter. But somewhere along the way, you decided it was easier to steal someone else's life. That's not something I taught you. That's something you chose. I opened the door. Behind me, I heard my daughter begin to sob. I kept walking. Down the hall, into the elevator, out of the building. Victoria caught up with me in the parking lot. You did the right thing, she said quietly. I stared at the Seattle skyline, the city I'd helped build one structure at a time. Then why does it feel like I just lost everything? Victoria didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I hadn't lost everything today. I'd lost it 8 weeks ago, the moment I heard my daughter's voice plotting my destruction. Today, I'd just finally let her go. I'd won. Legally, financially, strategically, I'd won everything. So why did it feel like I'd lost? Victoria laid out the settlement terms in her office. Richard hadn't had a choice. He'd signed. Richard received 25% of our joint assets, excluding the retirement package. No spousal support, the adultery clause made sure of that. The house sold for $920,000. I received 60%, $552,000. Richard received 40%, $368,000. Joint savings were divided the same way. I kept the entire $3.8 million retirement package protected in the irrevocable trust. My 401k, my car. Richard received his share of the house sale, his car, and nothing else. The criminal charges were dropped. I'd agreed not to prosecute the theft of $127,000 in exchange for a signed confession, one that would be filed with the Washington State Bar Association. It was over. Richard had already moved his things from the Renton apartment to somewhere in Idaho. I didn't ask where. I didn't care. Victoria shook my hand. Congratulations, Catherine. You protected everything that mattered. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost the things that couldn't be measured in dollars. 1 week later, I was having coffee with Diana when the email arrived. Subject line, Washington State Bar Association final ruling. My hands shook as I opened it. I scanned the formal language, the legal jargon, until I found the decision. Emily Hayes, license suspended for a minimum of 24 months, eligible for reinstatement consideration after completion of mandatory professional ethics coursework and probationary period. 2 years. My daughter couldn't practice law for 2 years. Diana watched me read. Catherine, how do you feel? I stared at the screen. How did I feel? I'd thought I'd feel satisfied, vindicated, justice served. Instead, I felt empty, hollow, like I'd won a war but lost something I couldn't name. I don't know what I'm feeling anymore, I said honestly. I kept thinking I'd feel Something, but I just feel empty. Diana reached across the table and took my hand. "That's called grief, sweetheart," she said quietly. "You're mourning someone who's still alive." She was right. I was mourning my daughter. The daughter I used to have. The daughter I thought I knew. The daughter who'd never really existed. I thought about the little girl who'd drawn houses with crayons. The teenager who'd helped me pick out tile samples. The law school graduate who'd hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mama." Where had that girl gone? Or had she ever been real? Maybe I'd built a fantasy the same way I'd built structures all my life. Brick by brick, beam by beam, creating something beautiful on a foundation that had never been solid. Maybe Emily had always been who she was now, and I'd just been too busy working to see it. Or maybe, and this was the thought that haunted me most, maybe I'd created her. Maybe my 30 years of choosing work over presence, success over time, money over moments, had taught her that people were transactions, that love was conditional, that everything had a price. Maybe she'd learned from the best teacher she'd ever had, me. Diana squeezed my hand. "You did what you had to do, Catherine. You protected yourself. That's not wrong. Then why does it feel like it is?" She didn't have an answer, because there wasn't one. I closed my laptop, finished my coffee, looked out the window at the Seattle streets I'd known for 30 years. Somewhere in this city, my daughter was starting over, without her career, without her father, without me. And I was starting over too, with my money, with my freedom, with a guest room at Diana's house and an entire life that needed rebuilding. I'd spent 30 years building other people's dreams. Maybe it was time to build my own, even if I had to do it alone. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, day 210, I'd sold the Bellevue house for $920,000. The young couple who bought it was expecting their first child. They asked me if I'd designed it. I said yes. They asked if I was sad to leave. I told them I didn't know anymore. I moved to the San Juan Islands, a small 2-bedroom cottage with an ocean view. I could see whales from my kitchen window on clear mornings, orcas moving through the water like shadows. I opened a small architecture studio, mostly pro bono work. I designed projects for nonprofits, veterans, organizations, women's shelters, buildings for people who actually needed them, not for wealthy clients who wanted trophies. Diana retired from the University of Washington and moved to a cottage 3 miles from mine. We hiked together most mornings, drank coffee on my deck in the afternoons. She never asked about Emily. She waited for me to bring it up. I never did. I volunteered at the free medical clinic on the island. The work was simple, checking people and organizing files, making sure no one fell through the cracks. Everyone in town knew my story. It had come out during the divorce. The local press had covered it. Some people admired me. "Good for her," they'd say. Standing up for herself like that. Others whispered, "She ruined her own daughter's career. What kind of mother does that?" I'd stopped caring what people thought. Former colleagues from Morrison and Partners came to visit sometimes, bringing wine and toasting my courage. But at night, when I was alone, my phone never rang with Emily's number. I thought about calling her. Sometimes I'd draft texts. "How are you doing?" I never sent them. Sometimes I'd take out her childhood drawing, the one I'd found in my car that first terrible night, my builder mother written in crayon, and I'd wonder who that little girl had become, or if she'd ever really existed at all. 1 year after I filed for divorce, day 365, I came back from my morning hike and checked my email. There was a new message notification. Sender Emily Hayes. Subject, "I'm sorry." I stared at the subject line for a full minute. My hand hovered over the mouse. I could open it, read whatever she'd written. Maybe she'd explained. Maybe she'd asked for forgiveness. Maybe she'd found the words I'd been waiting to hear. Or maybe she'd just sent more justifications, more blame, more reasons why this was somehow my fault. I didn't know which would hurt more. I didn't open it. Not yet. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. I closed the laptop and walked out to the deck. The morning ferry was crossing the water, slow and steady, carrying people to destinations I couldn't see. Somewhere across that water was my daughter. Somewhere she was living a life I was no longer part of. Waking up in a home I'd never seen. Building a future I wouldn't witness. And somewhere inside me was a mother who still wondered late at night when the wind came off the ocean and the whales sang in the distance if she'd made the right choice, If protecting herself had been worth losing her daughter, if justice had been worth the price. I didn't have answers. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I had a small cottage with an ocean view, a best friend 3 miles away, work that mattered, a life I'd built brick by brick on a foundation that was finally my own. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the family I'd imagined, but it was mine. And maybe that would be enough. I stood on the deck and watched the ferry disappear into the distance, carrying strangers to places I'd never go. Behind me, my laptop sat closed on the kitchen table. Emily's email waited unread, and I wasn't sure when or if I'd ever be ready to open it. The email sat in my inbox for 3 days before I found the courage to open it. Every time I tried, my hand froze on the mouse. What could she possibly say that would make any of this better? Day 368. I finally opened it. It was 2,000 words long. I read it standing in my kitchen because I couldn't sit down. Mom, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I lost my license. I lost my job. I lost the boyfriend I thought I'd marry. I lost Dad, too. He only needed me when I was useful. Jessica left him the minute the money disappeared. He calls me sometimes drunk, blaming me. I don't answer anymore. I have nothing now, Mom. And that's made me realize you spent your whole life making sure I had everything, and I repaid you by trying to destroy you. I convinced myself you didn't love me. Now I see I was wrong. I see what I destroyed. I can only blame myself. I'm 28 years old, educated. I knew right from wrong. I chose wrong. You were a good mother, Mom. I was the terrible daughter. I'm proud of you for being strong enough to walk away from people who didn't deserve you. I hope you're happy wherever you are. You deserve that. Love you if you'll still accept that from me, Emily. I read it once, then again, then again. Over 3 days, I read it 17 times. On day 370, I showed it to Diana. She read it in silence, then looked up. What do you want to do? I want to stop wondering whether I failed her, or she failed me, or we both just failed. Are you going to reply, I don't know anymore? I sat in front of my open laptop, the cursor hovering over the reply button. I could write back. I could say, I forgive you. I could say, let's try again. But would I mean it? Could I truly forgive her? I closed the laptop. People ask me if I regret what I did, if I regret destroying my daughter's career, if I regret choosing money over family. But they're asking the wrong question. The right question is, do I regret spending 30 years building a life for people who treated me like an ATM? Do I regret finally protecting myself when the alternative was letting them take everything I'd worked for? No, I don't regret that. Do I regret that it came to this? That I couldn't save my relationship with my daughter? Yes, every single day. But I've learned this. You can't build a relationship on one person's foundation alone. It takes 2 people both willing to carry the weight. I carried our family for 30 years. The moment I asked them to carry their share, they decided to tear it all down. So now I'm building something new, something smaller, but something that's mine. And maybe one day Emily will be ready to help me build again. But until then, I'm learning that the most important structure you can design is the one that holds peace in your own soul. And my structure finally has a solid foundation. I walk down to the beach. The email still sits in my inbox marked unread to her but reads 17 times by me. Maybe someday I'll reply. Maybe I won't. But at least now she knows what it feels like to build something with your own hands and watch it collapse. Maybe that's justice. Maybe that's just karma. Or maybe that's the saddest lesson I've ever taught my daughter. I hold her childhood drawing in my hand, my builder mother, and let the ocean wind lift my hair. I don't cry. I just exist in this moment of bittersweet peace. Building, always building. Even when it's just rebuilding yourself from the rubble. Looking back at my story now, I see it clearly for what it was, one of those family drama stories that destroyed 3 lives and taught me the hardest lessons I'll ever learn. Don't be like me. Don't wait 30 years to speak up when something feels wrong. Don't convince yourself that sacrifice equals love or that silence equals strength. I built my family on a foundation of my own exhaustion, and when I finally asked them to help carry the weight, they chose to walk away instead. These family drama stories we live through, they're not like the grandma stories you hear at holiday dinners, the ones that end with forgiveness and hugs and everything tied up neatly. Real life is messier, it's painful, and sometimes it doesn't have happy endings. Here's what I learned: love without respect is just servitude. My daughter and husband didn't respect me, they needed me. There's a difference. One builds relationships, the other builds resentment. The lesson I wish I'd learned earlier: set boundaries before you need walls. I spent 3 decades with no boundaries, so when betrayal came, I had to build walls so high that even my own daughter couldn't climb them. If I'd spoken up years ago, if I'd said, "I feel invisible," or "I need you to show up for me too," maybe we wouldn't have ended up here. My personal truth: protecting yourself isn't selfish. The Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself, and I forgot that second part. I loved everyone else more than I loved myself, and it nearly destroyed me. God may call us to forgive, but He doesn't call us to be doormats. To anyone living through their own family drama stories right now and seeing themselves in mine, don't wait for the betrayal. Don't wait for the breaking point. Speak now. Set boundaries now. Demand respect now. Because once you reach the place I reached, where love turns to strategy and your own child becomes your enemy, there's no easy road back. These aren't the grandma stories we want to tell our grandchildren about triumph and reconciliation. These aren't the grandma stories with happy endings, but they're the stories we need to learn from before it's too late. Build your life on mutual respect, not one-sided sacrifice. Build relationships where both people carry the weight. And remember, the most important person you'll ever protect is yourself. Because if you don't protect yourself, no one else will. Final note. This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely valuable. If this style doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.